Hi, Jessica.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay, that wasn't as complicated as I thought. Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't sure what it was gonna,
I didn't
how we were
either. I
gonna
was
like
like,
jump in.
okay.
Yeah.
So kind of hang out here and see if anybody has any questions or
I guess
so
so.
so what are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on the second book in my series. So, like Guardians of Mass and Memory, I'm working on the second book right now, and it's titled Guardians of Magic and Myth. And it's more so going into like underwater and mermaid people, kind of. And I say kind of because I'm like interested in Orisha. And
Oh yeah,
so I don't know if you've read Natasha Bowen's Skin of the Sea or heard about it. It's
I've heard about it. Yeah.
I have it right here. It's this, and she kind of does the same thing, but her book largely focuses on Orisha, but she also like talks about disrupting the Middle Passage and like what
Hmm.
if one of the Orisha saved people and turned like people who were thrown from the ships into like mermaids, so to speak, but they're not
Right.
mermaids, they're called mamiwata. And
Yeah.
it I thought it was so amazing because I was like, what if there was someone that could save them? And she like read my mind. So um yeah, so that's like something I'm working on right now, and my plan is to have the second book come out this year. But it's a lot more expansive than the first book, so that's like a whole lot of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, that book is actually on my TBR list, which is like 9,000 books high. So I don't know. Can't do it. I'll get to it one year.
yeah, I got mine from the library first, and then what I loved it so much, I was like, well, I just need to have this now, so I
Right.
just got it.
I think I've given up on the library because I take out books, never get to them before they're due, take it out. So it's
Mm.
like I've checked this out 14 times. Let me just either buy it or just give up for right now. So that's kind of where I am.
Well, they have a Libby, which is like an app that connects to your local library. You just put your library card in and you could borrow audiobooks and ebooks on your phone. So even if you like forget to turn it in, it'll just turn it in for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to do something. I'm just, you know, it's kind of crazy.
Oh no, I understand. This was the first book in a long time where where I wanted to sit and finish and read it. So, yeah.
So I see some people in. I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts or,
I have a question for Miss Jessica. Can you hear me okay?
yeah,
Yes.
perfectly.
Great. First of all, I enjoyed both of you, Miss Rita and Miss Jessica. You are both so knowledgeable, and um, I realize how far behind I am in time. I'm not going to say my age either, but Miss Jessica, you mentioned something about Ingram Spark. Is that where you published your first book?
Yes.
Can
So
you
the reason
Yeah, can you
why
spell
I
Ingram
heard
for me?
about Oh yeah. So
Thank you,
it's
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
INGRAM and then Spark. And I'll put it in the chat as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
And
I definitely
so
wanted to hear more about, what you did, your process of publishing. Uh, I wanted to illustrate my book because I felt that God gave me the vision for my book.
mhm,
And I do know how to draw. And giving it to someone else, I think, would not uh, totally give the picture of what I saw my characters should look like. And hearing you all speak about um, what's the term again? Afrofuturism. It's like
mhm.
that's the first time I ever heard the term, and I was, just writing down so many notes, and it's, that in and of itself, has allowed me to broaden my own mind and perspective. But just getting back, because I do not want to waste time, because other people may want to also ask. But if you can please share, your experiences with your first publication. And thank you again, both Ms. Rita and Ms. Jessica, for being with us today. Thank you.
Yeah. So for me, with using Ingram Spark, it is a very much more involved process, in the sense that when you're traditionally published, a lot of the work you're doing is like on your manuscript, and working back and forth between editors and everything like that. And there's like a team that is working around your book. But in the situation that I chose, I was the team. So that meant that, and because also like editing is a very expensive process as well, I made the decision to purchase editing courses and purchase writing courses, so that I could do that and do different rounds of editing. And that was really helpful for me,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
it
I'll get
taught me how
your
to
call
like
back. Thank
not
you.
be too precious, and how to kill my darlings in a way. Like, if I had a character that I really liked but they didn't serve a purpose, I was like, well, they have to serve a purpose, or I gotta chop them out. And I learned how to like do that, and like separate the writer from like the editor, and move through those processes. And I also like got an art degree from school, so I did the cover art for my book, as well as designing like the interior pages. Well, with the interior pages, I didn't necessarily fully design them. I used a website called Readsy, and I believe this is more so if you have like a chapter book kind of thing. I don't know about necessarily illustrated or picture book. Um, but if you don't have the time or the means to like format the chapters and the headers and on the page numbers and all that kind of stuff, and format it like into a chapter book, Readsy could do that for you. I'd like to go back and actually go into a program called InDesign to actually format the book, so that it can be just a little bit better. But those are definitely two key resources that I use. And it was a lot of buying courses and teaching myself and being patient. But I know that Rita could also speak to her process as well.
So, I don't know if you have an interest in this, but I'm traditionally published. So, I am with an imprint called Forge, which does kind of sci-fi, fantasy, spec fic, and is an imprint of Macmillan, which is one of the big five. And as you said, Jessica, it's a completely different animal than doing the work yourself. And as you already said, it's basically I turn in the manuscript, they turn it back and tell me it sucks, and I start working on doing it over again, and then over again, and then over again. So they basically have I have a team that handles all of the heavy lifting that Jessica trained herself to do, which is I have a cover design team. There's an editorial team. There's a marketing team, a publicity team. So my job basically is to turn the manuscript in and then clean it up based on what their recommendations are, and then get it sent out into the world. So it's a really different and to be clear, I'm also agented, which is a different thing too. I have an agent, and so a lot of the back and forth nitty gritty business part of it, I don't do. I don't do at all. I'm only involved when my agent says, "Okay, this is what we're doing. Can you sign off on it?" So it's you're two totally different animals.
Yeah. And
Thank you so
like,
much.
that was
Thank
one
you.
thing. Yeah. Because depending on what you want out of the process or the final product is a determining factor in which way you'd like to go. And some people do both.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
So, hi, this is Stephanie Lassane. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, great. I have some construction going on in the background, so I may mute myself in mid sentence. So, first of all, thank you both, and the third person, John. You guys were awesome. You gave us so much information that my pen is like literally smoking right now. So it's really hard to take notes and think of questions to ask. But as I listen to you both talk about your process in getting published, and I think if you're unpublished, that is like the number one question or subject that you are concerned with. Um,
Mhm.
for Jessica, how did you handle the marketing in your self publishing? And then I have a follow up question for Rita after you answer.
Mm-hmm. So that is one of each process is hard in its own way, but marketing can be really difficult because, like, if you're indie slash self published like me, then
Yeah.
it's on you to do all the marketing. um, and one tactic that I implemented that I honed down on certain social media platforms. Like, I try to get it everywhere, but there are certain ones where you see more traction happening and things like that. And I think one of the best forms of marketing that I've had, honestly, is in person events and doing panels and
Mhm.
talking to people like this. Um, because a lot of the time, if you just go on the internet and you just see somebody's random stuff, it might be amazing, but you don't know them yet. You haven't built up like a relationship or trust. And so some people will take the leap for you, and that's really awesome. But a good majority won't, because I mean, that's just how we're wired. We're wired to have some skepticism, as we should.
Mhm.
Um, but the way that I was able to like reach out was just honestly different events. Like I had an alumni event last year at my college, and I just went to go see who I could talk to and see what I could learn. And I ended up talking to a professor that I hadn't met before, and he offered me the ability to go and lecture at his class.
That's
And
awesome.
so I did a guest lecture, and that was a way that I was able to like speak with him, and we're going to keep up with each other. So different opportunities like that. Like I went to the Turning Page Bookshop in Goose Creek, South Carolina, and I spoke to the owners there, and I was like, "Is there a possibility that we could work together or do something?" And so I did a book signing, and that was my first book signing, and that's where I
You're
got
great.
a good portion of my sales,
Yeah.
and got the opportunity to meet people and like network and create friendships and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that in person part and actually reaching out, sending an email, or going to talk to somebody, those I think are your best bet, because
Mhm.
there will be some people who might react to your TikTok video or Instagram and they might go and get it. But I think that that in-person connection, or at least sending a message to someone cold and asking them what y'all could do together, that's the best thing. Someone seeing you try to put forth the effort and put yourself out there, unlike that in-person email kind of thing.
That's perfect. There's nothing like the in person connection. Okay, and so
That's
for my follow up question with you, Rita, you said that you were agented. Did you start out
Mhm.
that way?
Yes. So I I don't know if you know Veronica Roth, who wrote Divergent, who has the movies, but we have the same agent. Um, and I don't know if anyone's interested in this, but the way that I got my agent was I used to go in the beginning. I used to go to these conferences, right? And some of the conferences, and I think Black Ink has one too, has this opportunity too, is that some of the writing conferences will have agents present, and you get the opportunity to pitch to these agents. And so I had gone to a number of these things, and they're a little bit terrifying. No. They're a lot terrifying. And basically, you get 2 minutes, and it's like the Gong Show, right? And the idea of this is, okay, it's like Beloved meets the Vampire Diaries, and so you basically have like 2 minutes to give what they call the elevator pitch, and then you move on. It's a dating game, right? And you move on to the next agent. And so I went to one of these events, and and I tell the story all the time. So the first agent that I got, that I was sitting in front of. So my first book is called Remembrance, and that came out in January 2020. But prior to having an agent, and it's basically the story of a voodoo priestess who creates a parallel universe that's a stop on the Underground Railroad. So that's the premise of the book. And I actually sat down in front of this agent and I said that. And this person says, so I'm a little confused about the railroad thing. Like, is there multiple stops? Do you get tickets? I don't really know what's going on. And I actually laughed because I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. And you're already nervous and just like, oh my God, there's all these New York agents here and I'm just out of my element. But when he said that, I was totally taken off my square. And he kind of moved on. And then the next agent that came saw that I was so completely discombobulated, like, I'm going home. What just happened? I don't know what's going on. And I told her about what happened, and she thought that was hysterically funny. It wasn't, but she thought it was funny. And that's the woman that became my agent. And so she basically acquired the book, asked for the first 50 pages. And this is sort of traditional. Asked for the first 50 pages. If they like that, then they request full manuscript. And from that point, I signed with the agency. And that was sort of how I got my agent. And then from there, it was her that went start sending the book out, Remembrance, out for submission.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that advice. And I'm going to go back on mute now because, as you can hear, the construction is going on.
Actually, it's not that bad.
Wow. I can barely hear myself think right now.
So any other questions or anybody wondering about the whole publication process? I thought it was really interesting, Jessica, that you mentioned the in-person, because even though I have a publicity team, I have to tell you that it is those things, those in-person things that kind of make you gain traction. I'll go to like conventions or festivals, you'll meet other authors, and then something will come up and they'll say, oh, do you want to do an event, say at Storyfort in Idaho or something, which I never would have done if I hadn't met that person at something totally unrelated.
Yeah.
And especially during COVID, it was helpful because people were always saying, do you have a writing partner that you want to sit and kind of have conversation with? And so I met some wonderful people at festivals, and then was able to sort of have those relationships like, oh yeah, I had a great time with Jessica Mack. Maybe the two of us could do an event together. So yeah, even with a publicity team, traditionally published, I think there's no substitute for those actual in-person meetings and relationships that you form.
Yeah, because that is definitely how I feel, because that's how I got a lot of traction, by people coming by or me meeting people. Like, I met someone who had their own publishing company, and we worked together to co-create a book festival that was hosted at Turning Page Bookshop. And so it was me and other authors, meet other people, you get business cards, you talk about writing, and you have fun, and you're able to like grow your network, but actually meet people that you genuinely can connect with and have a good time talking with. And like, you could always put your work on social media and, tag your shop and like an Instagram and TikTok. And I really love TikTok because, as opposed to all the other platforms, it really shows you new things every day, and it will really help expand your reach. Whether that converts into people like diving deep into your work or like going to your website,
Sales.
that you making sales is another thing, but you get like reach. But I feel like the time when you can really ensure a connection is when someone's looking at you, whether it's like how we're doing now on kind of like a Zoom kind of thing, or whether we are actually in person or we're speaking over like a chat or something like that. When you make a one-on-one connection with people, it's easier for them to get to know you and trust you and want to support you because they genuinely like you and you like
them. I agree. And you can break through the chatter. There's so much stuff on Bookstagram and Book Talk and all of that it just kind of gets, even for me, who's like a voracious reader and a writer, it's like there's so many, it just kind of comes at you. And part of social media is content, right? So there's a kind of a rule of thumb, every third day you're supposed to post something new. Well, if you're the consumer, that is, and especially if you're following more than one or two or three, and I know I'm following probably a dozen content creators, it's just not that I don't want to say noise because that sounds negative, but there's so much content coming at you that it gets lost, and you don't even, it might be something that I'm really interested in, but it's like, oh my God, I don't know what to even focus on.
Yeah.
But if I meet you in person, it's like, oh, let's talk about
you're able to
this.
Focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I understand what you're saying too about like there being so much content, because I don't know how many things I've clicked save on Instagram, and they're all really interesting or really cool, but like after hundreds of saves later, you scroll back and you're like, oh yeah, this. So
right.
It's that thing of finding a way to get people to like have more of like a one-on-one with you, so to speak, in whatever platform or way you're trying to get that. But it's that trying to get that focus that's hard. And like you're saying, there's content everywhere and there's so much coming out at one time. Like if you have a YouTube account and you're subscribed to people, now we have shorts in addition to like long form videos. So some people, you get all these different pieces of content from different people at once, and you don't know what to focus on. You might just be like, I'm leaving, I can't do this right now. Yeah,
that sounds good, but I have 380 of those. So
ladies, this is Bernetta Morton again. And I feel that at this stage in my life, I can't be afraid to ask questions. So I would like to know from both of you, what is the general cost of publishing? And right now, my main focus is publishing children's books, and it'll probably vary in the 20-something page range. And self-publishing is something that I heard. I am truly starting like at square one, needing to know the ins and outs of publication, but I would like to just know a general cost of publication. Thank you very much.
I'm actually like trying to write out numbers. I'm like, okay, what does this cost?
While you're working on that, Bernetta, do you belong to SCBWI?
No, ma'am, I do not. Can you please tell me what that is?
So, sort of like what I talked about a little bit in the main session, trying to find your tribe and finding people where you can get information. So SCBWI stands for the Society of Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It's an international organization, like hundreds of thousands of people. They are found in every single state of the union. Some have, like I'm in Illinois, I'm outside of Chicago, so there's multiple chapters here. And the membership is nominal, $35, $40 a year or something. And the reason I mention that is because even if you want to self-publish, what they offer are critique groups, business meetings, seminars for marketing. You get to meet other illustrators where they get, I'm not an illustrator, so I don't want to sound stupid, but other illustrators who can tell you the most effective apps to use for illustration, how to download certain, certain places and stuff that makes your illustration easier. They can connect you to other people where you can kind of brainstorm your session. So particularly if you're writing children's books, I would, SCBWI might be sort of a way to kind of meet other people who are writing this in the genre that you're writing in, who can sort of help you avoid any pitfalls for children's literature, introduce you to resources that you can access to make that easier. So I'm just throwing that out there while Jessica.
And that's
crunches her number. SCBWI, yes.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So, I mean, this isn't necessarily going to cover everything, but I feel one of the things also that I think helps with talking about, things like this is just being real. So I'm going to give you the numbers as close as I can get them to what I personally had to pay for. And everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different because some people might have access to different resources or be able to pay for different resources than I did. But I mean, in order to get my book formatted, like in order to get like the cover together and to get that all together, I had to use Photoshop and InDesign. So I pay for an Adobe subscription, and I do like a lot of my art and stuff like that, and design like text kind of elements in InDesign, but in Photoshop. And the subscription I have with Adobe right now is $54.99 a month. And there are other programs that are out there that are free or one-time payments. But the thing about it, honestly, is like Adobe is kind of like a industry standard, so to speak. So a lot of people will default to that, and you can make sure that your settings are correct for like print color and like, is it going to retain this value and that kind of thing in the file. So that's why a lot of people go towards like the Adobe suite of like Photoshop and InDesign to like make those kinds of things. And what helped me is that I had my art degree, so I was able to like create the cover design, and I had some industry experience from my last job, so I was able to do the cover. So that cost is there for that. And as far as publishing the actual text and book cover to Ingram Spark, they do have a $49 fee for if you want to upload a print version of the book, so like a file that's made for like paperback or hardback. And if you also want to do an ebook file at the same time, uploading all those files at once is $49. Getting all that formatted is another thing. Like if you want to dig your heels in and you want to learn how to format it, you can. And if you are able to, then that would be like $49. As far as editing is concerned, it could be between $2,000 to $3,000, depending. Like maybe you have a 40,000 to 50,000 word book for one round of editing. And so I wasn't able to do that. So I went and took an editing course at a company called Liminal Pages, and a couple editing courses there. And the instructor is very helpful. She's an experienced editor, actively working on projects, and is a member of like different like editing societies. And she'll give you assignments, and she'll give you like a syllabus and overview kind of information. And she'll give you feedback on the assignments, and you can have a dialogue with her and speak with her. So I was really able to learn a lot of information and gain like permanent resources that I can continue to go and look back at. So to get those editing courses, maybe one course, I would say maybe between like $100 to $150 is like an average of the cost of those courses. It may have changed by now because I took those courses maybe like a couple years ago, and I'll definitely put them in the chat. But that was just because I realized what I couldn't afford. Now, someone who might want to do indie publishing can afford like $2,000 multiple rounds of editing. But that kind of like is a difference of cost there. So if you want to like dig in and learn that new skill and apply it to your work, you can, and it's going to cost less in a way. But if you want to give it to someone else and then take it back and work on it and then pay to give it back again and have them edit it again, you can do that. And as far as like formatting the interior pages of my book, so that's like to make sure that everything is justified and there's a header at the top and there's page numbers at the bottom and all that kind of stuff. I used Readsy, and that is a free platform. There is a little bit of limitation with that because you will have some printing standards that might not necessarily translate. Like we try not to have pages that are full of text on like certain opposite facing pages and that kind of stuff. And so manipulating that might be a little bit difficult, but you're going to get a basic, like I would say 90% good looking format for the interior of your book. And using that is free. And you can export the file for free. So that's a good resource if you're just not able to, and you just kind of want to get started and you want to take time to go back and reformat. Because the great thing about Ingram Spark is I could upload a reformatted file for my book right now. Like if I wanted to update the cover art, I could. And there's a fee to upload files, so you really got to make sure that when you're making corrections that like that's what you want, but you're able to like make those changes and things like that. And I took another writing course from Tomi Adeyemi, the author of Children of Blood and Bone, and that is really, really, really good, and that helped me to actually write this first book. And as far as the cost of that, I would have to look at that because I bought that course a few years ago, but I would say it would probably be under $200. But you're getting a lot for like talking to her, because she's talking to you about writing from like a 3-act movie perspective and kind of like a screenwriting perspective. So it's really good. But that's kind of like an overview of some of the costs that I've had, just to give you an idea. So it can be customized depending on like what you're able to afford and what you want to do.
Thank you again, both ladies. I feel that the information we are getting from you today is priceless. Thank you so much.
Oh, Rita, you're on mute.
Yeah. So Stephanie, you had a question about your first pitch. You know what? The thing that works best for me is, I know it's hard to tell, but I'm an extroverted introvert. And so I start stumbling over my words, and suddenly I cease to be able to speak the English language when I'm under stress. So whatever the time is, and I don't know what it is for Black Ink, whether it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, it will seem like an eternity if you're not prepared. So I actually sat and had a timer on my phone. This is what worked for me. I wrote it out, and then I had a timer on my phone, that's, so that I could actually sit there and present. Like I said, it's Wakanda Forever meets, Real Housewives. So you have to, and I think it's really important to have a comparison. In publishing, we call them comps. They call them that in a lot of places, but in publishing, they are actually called comps, because you want to be able to have that person hone down immediately onto what it is you're trying to say. So if it's whether it's women's fiction or sci-fi or romance, you want to be able to pull at least one example out of the air, one well-known example out of the air from each one, to be able to do that mashup. So they're like, oh, okay, I'm with you right away in 1 or 2 sentences. It's this and this pushed together, and then spend the next minute and a half kind of saying it's about a 27-year-old millennial who finds herself in New York City, who blah, 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 blah. But I would recommend kind of writing it out, so you have a script, going over it multiple times, making sure you're within that time limit, so that when you're sitting there and you're under stress and your brain goes offline, it's almost, it's already been rehearsed and you pretty much are clear, so that you're not just stuttering. Because even now at this point, when someone will say, well, what's your book about? Well, and it's like, I don't know. There's a girl in it. Every thought goes out of my head.
Thank you. I totally relate to that stuttering. I did write it out. I'm nervous, but I'm going to go and do it because, writers write. That's what they do.
Good for you. And the best advice I got is, you're not nervous, you're excited.
Okay, well, I make coffee nervous right now. I'm very excited.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Hi there. I have a question. First of all, thank you for all the information that y'all have been given, and for taking the time to be in this, to spend a whole hour chatting with us. It really means a lot, and I've just been blown away by this whole panel so far. So thank you for all your knowledge. Yeah, one thing I'm curious about is, I'm interested in science fiction. I'm a science fiction writer, and a lot of feedback I've gotten is that my work leans more towards speculative fiction. And I guess what I'm curious about is like, what are the difference between those two things? How are they handled sort of from an industry point of view, as well as like a pitching point of view? Like, would you just talk about them differently? Would you have, present them in different ways? And just, is there any different approach depending on those two sort of genres? Understanding, I know that they are sometimes used interchangeably, but my understanding is that speculative is more emergent. But I guess I'm curious on y'all's ideas around that particular genre.
Between the difference between spec fic and sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
So I write what's defined as spec fic, and I think the way that I would describe my work is it doesn't have a lot of, it's heavier on the speculation, lighter on the science, if you wanted to make that definition. But I think that border and that boundary and that definition is really squishy. It's real fungible, depending on what you're writing. And so, if you take either of my books, it's like, well, there is a science aspect of it, but it would, I guess if you had to define it, it would be more magical realism than true sci-fi, because it doesn't have the heavy scientific. So if you look at, like, if you take something like high fantasy or whatever, most people when they're thinking sci-fi are thinking, and take this with a grain of salt, are thinking kind of very futuristic. It could even be steampunk if you want to use that aspect of it. But there's going to be, as a rule, AI or some sort of very futuristic medicine, or that you're in this future world where science has developed and advanced and is very much a part, interwoven into the thematic issues of the story, right? That's strictly science fiction. Say, think Star Trek, right? Whereas if you took something like Wakanda, there's science, certainly with the metals and all of that, but it's more speculative in terms of, it focuses almost more on the society and on the interpersonal relationships and all of that. So even if you took the metal out, which is sort of the catalyst for why they get thrust into the world, you still have this very real and very vivid and well-drawn world where it's more about power struggles and interfamilial friction and all of that. So it kind of leans a little bit more towards spec than sci. If that, I don't know if that helps at all.
It absolutely does. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with what you were saying. Like, science fiction usually tells about science and technology of the future. Like, that's usually the focus. So, like, the rules and laws of science, like what can be proven. And science itself is not fiction. So we're trying to, like, dive into proving this thing in, like, this fictional world. So it's kind of like those different little bits. And as far as, like, speculative fiction deals with, like what Rita was saying, more human rather than technological problems. And so it's distinct because of the focus on possible futures in a way. And it's like a super category for a bunch of different genres that deliberately go away from imitating like a consensus reality of like everyday experience. But speculative fiction can include like a bunch of things. So that's why like you can have fantasy in speculative and sci-fi and speculative, horror and all these different things. So if you want them to kind of like talk to each other, they can. So, if you want them to be able to like mingle, you can definitely do that. And I think that's what Rita's saying too.
Cool. Well, that's very, very helpful. And I thank you again for your time today. This has been just wonderful. And I'm feeling really energized going into pitches. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. So you're going to pitch today?
I think tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck. Well, this was good.
Yeah. So it looks like that might be, you're welcome. That might be it. So I'm going to see if I can find a flight into Charleston. Because that, yesterday was a cluster. So
yeah.
It looks like I might be able to do that so that I can make the book signing. So are you going to be there tomorrow, Jessica? At the reception?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to the reception tomorrow. And if I don't see you there, I would love to see you at the book signing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Then I am going to sign off if no one has any other questions, and jump on Expedia or something.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.